Going, got there. We made it. We made it, everyone. This was slightly delayed. 25 minutes. Who's he barking? Oh, probably everyone's walking home. Can you get me a glass of water? Can I trouble you for that since I'm on the internet? So my wife helps me with things. This is an exciting beginning. So I'm just waiting for enough people to jump in here so that I can I'll get started, and that's the deal. So we will that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna sit here and wait for a minute. So if you're watching this, you might want to scrub through because I started 30 minutes late. Now I don't know what's going on. Now I'm seeing names pop up. There you go. There's a good boomerang for Instagram. It's just me going like this. Not with water in my hand though. Good day, everyone. What's up? I am excited to be on here. I love this, and I feel like I feel like if we're done school, like damn near everybody is just about done school. There's a few schools that go super late, but like it wasn't like there were snow days this year.
Well, look at our city or our town.
Unless you're Tracy Pinter.
Our town is still doing. Their kids are all doing finals.
We're doing finals in our town?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What? For what?
Yeah, I don't know.
Wow.
That's lost.
Yeah, Zooks. Hi from England. That was a terrible English accent. Hello. My people are actually from England also. We didn't know about that until later in life because apparently it was like a bad thing where my family grew up to be from England, so they all pretended they were something else. But then I found out later that I have family from England. Did you know that?
I did.
It's lovely. I was so excited when I found out that.
That's why you like a tea with milk in it.
That's why I like that?
Yeah.
All right.
For me,
we got enough people. We'll jump into it. So Jake, you can start the podcast right now. So for those of you that are new, or maybe you forgot, my name is CJ Reynolds and I run this YouTube channel called Real Rap With Reynolds. And the whole idea behind this crazy creation of me being, a grown man with the YouTube channel is trying to help teachers, trying to help folks out and create a community, or be a part of a community rather, that is showing up to things like this on a Sunday afternoon when it's totally beautiful outside today. But like we're going to be inside for an hour or so talking about stuff that matters to you, especially with regards to education. So if you're just here new, all you have to do is put your question in on the side. If you put a Q or the word question next to it, just helps us identify it quicker. But do not be surprised if somebody that you've never met before in your life starts speaking to you on the side there, because that is what happens. It is not just me, but this is me talking, but then all these other folks kind of having their own conversations and talking about stuff and sharing ideas and stuff like that as well. If this interests you and it's not enough, like it hasn't satiated your appetite, there's also a book that I wrote called Teach Your Class Off. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can also have me speak at your school, which right now that looks like we're virtual, unless you live in like 3 states in the country where they're still actually like meeting together in schools. But I'm happy to do any of that stuff. We also have a Facebook group, Real Rap With Reynolds Teacher Talk. There's a podcast, Real Rap With Reynolds Teacher Talk, on everywhere you can get a podcast. Do we have anything else?
No, there's lots of stuff. Just Google it.
Just Google Real Rap With Reynolds and you'll find all the stuff. So that's it. So we're gonna jump into questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
You feeling set? I have something in my eye. There's something. It's weird when you have to mess with your eye when you're on here, because then it looks all bloodshot and looks like you were doing something, I don't know, mind altering before this. I like when you read the questions real slow before you.
Oh, sorry.
And then it just jumped. Wait, where's it?
The first one. Q.
Oh, all right. Well, usually you put them like all the way at the top.
But I can't because there's no more comments.
Oh. Got you, girl. Anna Ballerina is asking, when you go to school for education, specifically secondary, what classes do you take? What kind of things do you learn? So, man, to be fair, I had a sense that the stuff I was learning was not going to be as relevant as I wanted to. The classes that I had, the most meaningful class I had in college was, I had 2 classes that were taught by this woman, Dr. Jorgensen, who was a professor at Rowan University, and she was fantastic. But I think the reason I loved her so much was because she taught for like 25 years or something and then went into educating educators. And most of my teachers, I didn't get the sense that they did that. Most folks that taught me, I didn't feel like I don't think they ever taught before. They went to school and studied, like adolescent behavior, but they never like dealt with it on the scale that we deal with it in class. So I'd say, I just remember learning about like educational law. I remember learning about like things like classroom management, creating engaging curriculum and ideas in the classroom. And then I just, my overwhelming sense, and look, this is skewed. I can't remember back that far, but part of it, I remember being told to play it safe, to be smart, to be careful. And I get all that because there's a lot of crazy people in schools and they do a lot of crazy stuff. And, students are dealing with the aftermath of that. That being said, I don't think school, especially in the state in which education is in, should ever be played safe. Like, I think you should be teaching with reckless abandon. The reason the book is called Teach Your Class Off is because I just think people should get excited. Use your gifts. Use what's special about you. Use what you bring to the table. Use what gets you excited. Figure out who your students are. Connect with them. Build relationships. Have crazy classrooms. Decorate your room in like the greatest. Like, have your kids walk in and be in awe of something. Do something in class that's going to leave them in awe. We'll connect with them and create lessons based around who they are in a sense that's going to get them stoked to be in class, and not like, no, don't play it safe until you have like tenure or something like that. That's the worst thing that you could do. So that's what I remember learning about. But that might have just been my young idealistic self thinking like, these people don't know. And they probably in retrospect knew a hell of a lot more than I gave them credit for. So I'd love to take an education class again just to see like what people are talking about and what they do and what they say and stuff like that. So that would be interesting. Joanne is asking.
There's 3 and you'll see what she says.
Oh, okay, got it. So the beginning of my teaching career, I taught middle school in Baltimore, which is now closed due to being on the persistently violent list. I now teach in an Arizona suburb. It is 97% white, a very different racial makeup. Oops, here's the question. It says, so how would you integrate teaching about topics that actually are political without risking being accused of, quote unquote, trying to warp the minds of young with your politics? So I think this is a great question because, one, I don't know what it is about the school that I'm at, but we could talk about anything. And that's, I forget, and I'm saying that because I forget that a lot of other folks don't teach with that sort of freedom. Where I have a friend who teaches at a very elite private school, a very good friend of mine, that I used to teach with in West Philly, now lives in California, teaches at a very elite private school. And when he brings up certain things like women's rights, like talking about like immigrants and stuff like that, like because his family immigrated from the Philippines, and that's something that's very much part of his heart. When he brings these up, he'll get parent phone calls that say like, this, here he is, the teacher's trying to like, hit us with his liberal agenda. And what I think that becomes, what I think the way around that perhaps is oftentimes when we share things in class, whether it's about politics or race or, women's rights or LGBTQ community, like anything that is kind of a little bit nerve-wracking for a lot of folks to deal with, I simply offer up the topic. Or if someone asks a question, I let the kids have the conversation. And then our job, I think, is to facilitate that conversation. Now, look, you're going to do that with some level of bias, I am certain. Because, to be fair, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that sometimes certain things are so ingrained in us that we don't really know that we're even coming from a space that is biased, right? That being said, I think it just comes up with opening things up to actually having those conversations, because a lot of the books and the stories that we're reading, that we're coming from so-called troublemakers anyway, right? Like there are tons of books that we read in our class that seem sort of innocuous now, but like Fahrenheit 451, like people raised hell about that book when it came out, or Lord of the Flies, or Of Mice and Men, right? These books that look like they are white writers writing about white people, but really like this caused a lot of chaos back in the day. So So it's funny that we allow those things in our classrooms, that we don't want to like actually talk about like the real stuff that's going on in there. So I think if I was in a school where I felt that way, or I felt like parents were going to get upset, it's not me pushing my agenda. It's me creating a safe space for students to explore what they are curious about. And that is part of the job of school, right? If we're not teaching children that they can ask questions, that they can be curious, that they can push back, that even two people in the classroom that do not agree on something can have an honest and fair discourse with one another, where they are learning how to do things like actively listen. Like, the reason there's so much divide, in my humble, opinion here, is that in our country there's such this divide because we're not really listening to listen to someone else. And active listening means you're listening to someone, and then if I'm having an argument with my wife, I can say back to her exactly what she just said. Like, so what I'm hearing is, you feel like this, and not just thinking about what I want to say next. So I think that that's how I would approach that. If something comes up in class, if you want to talk about something in class, if the students want to talk about something in class, you are just trying your best to create an open and honest space for people that may not agree to have to talk about stuff and to share and to be active listeners. And so it's all the same stuff we're teaching kids to do with like things like persuasive essay anyway. Or debate team anyway. So that's how I think I would handle that situation. I'm really interested in, like, if you are in a particularly like tricky space, like your school is like super, whether it's left or it's right or it's conservative or it's doesn't broach those topics, like how are you handling those things, especially in light of current events and all the things that are going on in our world today?
You're going to have a lot more questions to be able to share your own.
Okay.
I see them
So,
covered.
look, let me remind everybody on the front end. One, I don't know everything, but two, I'm not afraid to talk about anything either. And if I don't know something, I'll just tell you that I don't know. I've done that tons of times. I shoot it out to everyone in the comment section here, but nothing's off the table here. I'm willing to like have a conversation about anything. So yeah. Jason is asking, what strategies do you use to keep students engaged with material? How can a teacher make class interesting? Jason, I think that the best thing that you can do to make class engaging is to let students know that you actually care. And I think you do that by saying, I'm so glad you're in my class. I really care that you're in here, and I want this to be the greatest year ever. Like, we can't just expect the kids remember. And like, I find it's even on parent teacher night. So students won't always show their cards. My guys like just kind of hold up, and then they just kind of are waiting it out to see if you are really about what you're about. And they're not going to show you any sign of whether or not they agree with you. They're excited. They're happy. So like, I'll have parents call me and they're like, oh, my son loves your class. I'm like, your kid that looks like this every day? I'm like, really? Like, but on parent teacher night, I do the same thing. When parents come in, I go, I want you to know something on the front end. One, I really love what I do. Two, your student success is the most paramount thing to me this year. And three, I want to have the greatest year ever. I'll do anything that I can to make that happen. That puts parents in a space of like, how many teachers say that? Like, I've been to a lot of back to school nights that I've been a part of a school or I've gone to for my own kids. I have never, ever heard a teacher say they were excited about being here, that they loved what they did, that we were going to have, like, parents, rest assured, we're going to have an awesome year. That doesn't mean everybody has an awesome year. Some kids just don't want to do school. Some kids have more stacked against them than I am capable of dealing with in 1 year, or me and my team are capable of dealing with in 1 year. But that's part of it. The second thing is always, of course, relationships, building relationships with students, which I have a ton of videos on, so I won't go too much into that, but it's like basically it's building relationships with kids to show them that you care and to find out what they like so that you can teach through that lens of the things that they are already interested in. And then don't be afraid. Like, you have to give zero about anybody thinking, there he goes again. Oh, they're outside today. Look, you're outside today. Or what's going on? Your room is too loud. We can't even hear next door. And look, there's space for that, because there are times when I'm doing independent reading with my guys and it sounds like madness next door. And I got to go over and say, bro, we're trying to read and we can't, or we're taking a test and we can't. But we're loud all the time in my class. We're out in the hallway, we're outside, we're moving around, we're walking around the school and doing stuff, and in the dining hall and on the stage and all this stuff. And it's like, I used to get nervous about that because you see the looks that you get from other educators sometimes. But I just can't pay attention to that because you know why? Our job's too important. And education's only ever about the students. It's not about me anyway. Sam Josh is asking, I'm looking at this profile picture. I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at. Sorry, I got distracted because I have ADD. I am an aspiring teacher and am worried about my political views preventing me from getting a job. I'm right of center. Should I be politically active if it comes back to bite me later? So that's a great question. I would say, Sam, that I am who I am, but in an unfair way, it sort of aligns with many of the things that my school does, right? So I will say that at the moment, my school has not taken an active role in what's happening, right? So like our students, and I'm being gentle with this, right? I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus or say anything because I don't have anyone to have a conversation with. But as of right now, right, our student population is about 99% Black males, and it's all male school. We have not done anything as a collective to stand like with Black Lives Matter, to talk again about anything else in that realm, to talk about anything in that space. But I have, right? So, but I, oh gosh, I don't know. Like, let me ask you this, because I think, am I doing that because that's just what I do? Or like, I wonder if like I taught at a school that was like, yo, we're not condoning this. We're not condoning the activities that are happening. And no, like, and I don't want to go into, that's not necessarily where I'm going right now, like whether or not I condone like protests and stuff like that. But like in standing with folks and putting out a video like we put out the other day, the educators talking about race, to be posting the stuff that I'm posting on social media. Or a number of other people that we know that are like,
what's your actual question?
Should folks be mindful of that? I'm talking myself into something. I would say you don't have to be mindful of that. I think you need to be who you are. But if you're being it I think if we are being who we are in a way, in a place that comes from, look, my place always comes from love. It always comes from growth. I'm not posting anything on social media that I am like trying to like, I'm not trying to punch people in the face with truth. What I'm trying to do is help folks to see or to question what they're doing or what they're thinking or feeling, and then figure out a plan to move forward, right? It's about growth for me. Even what's happening with regards to Black Lives Matter movement right now is very interesting to me. It's very interesting to me, like the sort of things that people choose to post on social media, not because I'm judging what they're doing, because I'm wondering what the next step is. How does this impact your curriculum, your life, your interaction with your community? Because if we don't go somewhere with this, it's worthless, right? It was just a flash in the pan. It's like, yeah, we did it. I posted the black square, but what's that really having an impact on your community, on our country? How is that impacting it? So I would say, be mindful. Like, you might get some hate for that. You might get some pushback for that. They might not want someone that's wrapped up in that or in any of the things that you believe in. But I think that if what you're doing can be, if it's about the students, right? If it's about love, if it's about coming at something and wanting folks to grow, and not just like punching people in the face with the truth, like that's where I come from, and I feel comfortable with that. So I think that's the best way I can sort of answer that question.
And you also never go at things with like a way to like, you're just trying to win an argument, or you're very, the way you argue is really interesting. And it's a way that I think that should be modeled more, because it's not about winning. It's always about growth, and you're always meeting people where they kind of are within, because everybody's going to be at a different place within all subjects, right? And so to move someone forward, it's to, you just do it so gently and gracefully. I wish more.
But so first of all, I really appreciate hearing you say that, because I have what I think.
Because I'm the opposite.
I'm talking about, we know. You're the mama bear. But I think the but I think this adds to the conversation too, real quick. I just want to say that when we come at things with curiosity, so if someone has different political views than you do, and they say, vote for this candidate, that's who I'm voting for. Some people will just go, you're an ass. Like, now I can't even talk to you because you are like that. To me, it's like, that's really curious that you would say that. Like, what would make you vote for that candidate? What would make you take that stance? What would make you stand on the sidelines or get into the protests? Or why are you doing what you're doing? I just find that sort of curiosity, it does the same thing with our students. What you're doing is learning how to build relationships. And not everyone we have friends that have vastly different views than we do on a number of things. But it is always interesting to me as to why they are there, how they got to that place, like, and why are they thinking those things? Anyway, I just think that's an interesting conversation. Jake is asking, I do my first year of teaching in September, just finished training. Any advice given the current state of the world? Jake, I would say, look, man, my first year advice is basically the same every single year for new teachers. I have no idea what to expect this year. I don't know if we're going back to school in the fall. I don't know if we do distance learning, like, are we a little bit in school? Are we a little bit out of school? I saw pictures of, and I don't know if this is just a one-off thing, of schools in China where the students had like these hats on, essentially had pool noodles coming off of them, to remind them of social distancing. And I think any school that can pull that off should be commended, because I know my students would be taking those pool noodles off and sword fighting with them. I think they'd be hitting each other in the head with those things. Like, it would go 7 different ways of wrong in my school, just because they're teenagers and that's what they do. So I don't know what to expect. I would say to be flexible, to not be hard on yourself, and to know that this is a moment in time that we will grow out of and come out of. I don't see or hear the news, even though depending on which news channel you watch is completely different, information. But nothing so far has showed me that we don't go back to brick and mortar schools, right? So like all the stuff you've learned about, watched about, thought about, dreamt about, we will get there. But this is going to be this kind of weird thing where any teacher will tell you right now, it's been more like the A team than anything else. No school that I know has had like a completely cohesive, coherent plan as to how we're going to execute on this. It's everyone's just kind of like, what are we doing? Like, I'm on the phone with teachers. I'm like, dude, what are you doing this week? How are you continuing to make this exciting 9 weeks in? Because it's trouble. Are you looking at squirrels outside?
No.
All right.
Did you see the mock-up classroom that it was in the States, had like plastic partitions for like separate rooms for like kids? And I'm just like, what? I get that everybody's going through the process of trying to figure out what's the best scenario for next year, but it's like, there's no best chance having them all in school
through those.
Well,
how do you make sure that
they don't go all the way to the ceiling? Which to me, it's like, what is that preventing? Like, you still sneeze in your bubble, it can't go over the. Like, I just don't understand any of it. It's really
like
just kind of funny.
Yeah, it's like when you go to the.
Oh, Erica said the plastic partitions were there in Arizona where she is.
I was at the liquor store the other day getting wine, and instead of glass, they had a clear, like, painter's tarp, like one of those real cheap ones.
I mean, it still
does
the job.
Clipped to the ceiling and then just hung down. And that was just like,
it still does
I know,
the job.
but like it's so crazy to me. So my answer is, I don't really know what to expect. I would just be willing to roll with anything. And when you're coming up with lessons, if your school doesn't provide stuff, don't recreate the wheel. Like, there's tons of free stuff online. Like, I'm doing a brand deal with a company called HMH right now. So that's a caveat, but I found out through doing this partnership, they have free stuff on their website. Scholastic has free stuff on their website. New York Times lesson plans has free stuff on their website that you can use in class. That is really good stuff. That is a good starting point for any number of things. So that's the other thing I would think about, is like, don't go crazy because everyone's trying to figure this out. And kind of the cool thing about starting next year is, like, nobody is necessarily better at this than anyone else, really, because we're just trying to all figure it out. Logan is asking, how do I as a Black teacher deal with my essentially all white staff in the aftermath of this movement? Logan, That's a really great question. I think, oh gosh, how do we deal with this?
Me, even on a personal note, just even walking around and encountering like an African American or someone that's Black, I just feel like there's been so much divide created. It's like hard even for me as a person. So I can't even, I don't know. I know we were never together, obviously, but like, or certain people, or it's just showing. It just feels all so strange right now.
I would, my sense is, Logan, to speak to this from the place in which I can speak to it from, right? Because, to be fair, like to say it out loud, right? You might have watched my content. You might know where I come from already on this sort of thing. But like, being a white man, having privilege in my life and going to school and never having to worry about, do people see me? Do they like me? Am I going to be respected? Like, I just assume everybody's going to. And that's pretty great to be able to walk into somewhere and feel that. Mm. That being said, when I go back, the people that I am going to talk to about this are the people I've already talked to anyway. And what I'd hate to see is like white educators, like, because I think Black educators in large part get put in these tricky situations a lot of times where it's like they are the disciplinarian. Like I see this in school all the time where like I have two very good friends, Mr. Meeks and Mr. Stu, and Stu is always like, the folks will call him over to kind of like speak some truth to someone. And it's like, bro, handle your own situation, or like work as part of a community. Cool. But like, you can't just call them like Black educators all the time to like deal with, Black kid problems in their class. So I think it is having authentic and conversations about people if they're willing to. Like, I think that's where everything comes down to, right? Is if we are communicating with folks and we're being authentic and we're talking about something, and it's not like you are, being careful that you're not felt of or seen as like the token like Black educator in your school, and you must know all the things about Black Lives Matter, and like it's like that kind of a thing. That's a great question. I'm gonna have a better answer for that. I need to have someone else speak that. I feel like my guy Shivy. So if you go on Instagram, don't call me Shivy, or call me. I don't know. I would say don't call me. Call me Shivy. I feel like we'd have a great answer for that. Or I'm wondering for other folks, if you're in here and you are a person of color and you're an educator, especially if there are not a lot of folks that are that look like you teaching in your school, how are you handling that situation? Because I feel like this is a great space to talk about that, or in the Facebook group at Real Rap With Reynolds Teacher Talk. Because the reason I say that is because, and I'm not trying to shirk that question off. Here's my reason, is that the folks that I'm already in authentic community with at my school that don't look like me, that don't come from the same background as me, I already have those connections there. So if they come over for a beer, or if we're hanging at school talking about something, those conversations can already happen authentically and in a safe space. And we can really we don't have to agree on everything. Like, we can butt heads on stuff, but we are almost like in this covenant together to know that we're going to work it out, right? Like, that's not going to be it's not going to be a divide for us. And when we can create those spaces for educators and for students, we're doing them a service, because we are creating a space where we can actually have a conversation. And when we are but when that comes from some inauthentic place, that gets really difficult, because now we're talking about something, and it's like if your school never talked about race before, and all of a sudden, my hope is this year there's going to be a lot of PDs around this, right? But then it becomes this very uncomfortable place, which is fine. But it's like, it can't be a one-off. It's got to be like, we have to keep going, because once you get used to having uncomfortable conversations, then it's a wrap. Like, then you can just do it. And it's far easier to engage with. But when we are not in a space of being used to having uncomfortable conversations, then it's like, I don't know if I should ask this question. I've always wondered this. You're afraid that some of your sort of secret bias are going to come through, and someone's going to see it and they're going to call you out on it. And then it's like, I look like an ass. And then, so it's like, we have to, I think, teach people how to have genuine conversations in there, be active listeners, and then sort of dive into some of this stuff. But it has to be dove into again and again and again and again and again. It's not a one-off PD at the beginning of the year kind of thing. I just answered that one.
Oh, sorry.
Want me to sing?
No.
Thanks, buddy. Sam is asking a follow-up question. How do I navigate social media while maintaining future job prospects? Sam, I would block your social media for any number of reasons, right? I've just seen like
your personal one though.
Yeah. So you could have like a
teacher.
like a teacher-y one. So like I used to have, and for a number of reasons, right? One, I don't know if there's a picture of you in a bathing suit or something like that, or doing a sweet keg stand in college. Like you just don't want that getting out there because it looks like you don't want students, you don't want parents, you don't want to communicate. Like that's a little bit too deep, right? Like I think that's me, and maybe other folks don't see that, but I just think that like you should be mindful of your personal life. Also, as I've gotten larger on social media, I limit the number of times that I have my children. So like I used to have all kinds of pictures of my kids on Instagram when I have another account that no one really knows about. I haven't used it in years really, but it was like me and the kids at the park, me and the kids in the car. Here's my house. Here's my address behind me. Here's like what we're doing, where we're going, here, like who we are. And I've learned that I want to limit that because I don't want because I don't know who's following me. I don't know who's all out there. And thankfully, to be fair, like we just get like largely nothing but love on social media for the most part. Twitter's a little bit of a different situation sometimes, but for Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all that stuff, I don't get hate like a lot of other creators do. And that's a good thing. And that's a whole nother conversation. But I'm not sure that I want to bring my family into that. So you might just want to be mindful of that too. So if you want to have a platform to have that conversation, I would say having one that's specifically based around that. Best practices, connecting with educators, sharing your thoughts and feelings and hopes and dreams in your story and the stories of your students. Like, I think that's a great idea. And I think most educators should be doing that. But just be mindful of the stuff that you have. Because remember, the people that you put in your pictures might not have signed up for this also, right? So like, there's a reason my wife isn't on my Instagram very often, because she doesn't want to be on social media. She doesn't want to have her face out there in front of thousands of people. That's not what she does. Occasionally the hand comes in from the side. But that's her choice. And my children are too young right now to make that decision also. So that's part of the reason I don't do it. Seamus. Man, I only know one person in my whole life named Seamus. That is amazing. Now there's two people. I just feel like that's not a name you hear very often. Awesome. Hey, Reynolds, would you get yourself involved in teacher trainings? Yep. So Seamus, I do this often. I travel around to different schools, especially in the summer. And I speak to educators all the time. I run PDs. I do keynote talks and stuff like that. I'm at like different teacher conferences all the time, talking about stuff. I've never done I've worked with colleges where like I will be like a guest speaker or lecturer or run a lesson for a night. So I'll go to different schools and sit in and do that. But I've been asked a lot to do like, would I teach like a course at a college? I just don't have, that takes way too much time for me to be able to do that. And I have too much, there's only one me and there's not enough of me to begin with. But I love that. So that's part of the reason I do the YouTube channel. It's part of the reason I wrote the book. And then anyone that's ordering the book, I'm offering this thing. So if you and a group of educators from your school or your district or whatever order the book, first of all, if you go through me, you get a discount rate if you order like a certain number. And then I'm doing Skype calls or Zoom calls with schools or districts that have read the book. So anyone that wants to be involved with that, they read the book, they go through the, however many weeks that they're talking about it. And then I'll Zoom or Skype with you and have that conversation and talk about like whatever your questions are and stuff. So yeah, I love that stuff. Becca the Blondie is asking, do you have any advice for getting a job as an aide? I was a sub last year and volunteer at a daycare and for a research project for a few months, but it seems like everyone has more experience than me. So Becca, that's a great question. I to me, right, someone in the side might know this better, and I'm really, really would love to know like what your take is on this. But my sense would be that it's all who you know, right? So the more times you show up, the more times you're involved, the more times that people know who you are, that they can count on you, that they know you're a caring person, that they know you're about the kids, the opportunities are going to show up. And so I think about like when I substituted for I substituted for 3 days. I couldn't stand it. But there was another guy. Do you remember that dude that used to work with us at Winslow Township? And he was a sub all the time, like full time.
Oh, yeah.
And because they knew who he was, they knew they could trust him. He knew the kids, he knew the staff, they liked him. It was like you didn't have to figure it out. It wasn't like the pick of the litter that day. It was like, or like it wasn't like you were shaking a magic 8-ball. Like you knew what you were going to get if you hired this person. So I think just being a part of the community and trying to connect with people as much as possible. And then through that, that's how everything comes. And look, this is like a life skill of mine. Like the reason I've gotten opportunities that other like YouTubers haven't or authors haven't is because whenever I go to anything, whenever I go to a conference, and I might put myself on blast here because people are going to know my secret plan here, I get to know everyone to the level where, should I tell them about our secret Google slide?
I think you've already said that.
All right, I'm going to tell them again. Where my wife makes Google slides
that I did it
of like
at the conference.
Yeah, because it was awesome. Where like my wife will put a picture of someone and a brief bio of who they are. So I'm at the conference. I'm like, oh, look, there's Brad Hubbard over there, superintendent, and whatever. And then I go, okay, Brad's got 3 kids, blah blah blah. Like I just look whatever I can get off. Like when they put their bios on the website for the conference, I have that there. And then I go over and I engage. And because
I don't deep dive. Let's not get creepy. I don't deep dive into people.
It's just whatever the bio is in the thing. But you bullet point it for me, so I don't have to like read the whole thing. And I put it in
a form for you.
Yeah. And so the beauty of that is the more I know people, the more opportunities show up. And I'm doing it for good reason. It's not like I'm just trying to creep and like get all the money. But it's like, no, I'm trying to empower educators. I'm trying to make PD better. I'm trying to make teachers excited. And so look, I'm doing it. I think of it. I'm doing it for teachers and students.
To be honest, I do that for you because you can't remember those things.
No, I can't remember anyone's name. Oh my goodness.
All of us, like maybe it's something in the water over here.
I think it's also the older I've gotten.
So I made a visual aid for you. That's all I did. I was just trying to help you out.
Visual aids. Thanks, buddy. So that's what I think. I think it's the getting to know people game. Joanne is asking follow-up question. Do you have a Reader's Theater version of Lord of the Flies? I'd love to read it with my lower level readers. Yeah, so if you go on, we read it as a play, and I have adapted it somewhat, but that looks very messy because there's like the one I found online has like a ton of spelling errors and stuff in it. There's one available on Amazon. If you go to any one of my videos, especially the ones that I put like all the stuff in the description box, the lives don't always get that. There is a link to my Amazon page. And look, on the front end, I will make 3 cents off of this, literally, if you buy this. So like, I'm not sending you there so I can take your money, although that 3 cents adds up over time.
Occasionally we'll get a $15 direct
every
deposit.
8 months, we get a $3 check from Amazon. But on there, if you go on there and you follow my Amazon link, you can get to my store on Amazon, and I have the Lord of the Flies version of as a play on there, and it's only a couple bucks. But there is one that exists. If you type in Lord of the Flies play script or something along those lines into Google, you will find one that you can print out, and that's what I use in class. I print them all out, and I use it for those sort of like reluctant readers or students that are reading on a reading level that's much lower than the rest of their classmates. And that's been awesome because then you're doing it together and it's just more fun. I'm terrible at speaking of names. I'm going to ruin your name, and I apologize. And it has not anything to do with you. It has to do with my inability to read a number of vowels in a row, which... Are you going to start talking about phonemic awareness all of a sudden?
We're starting a dyslexia program for Brody, and it's been awesome because the first lesson, as I've been prepping, has been all about like,
how do all these vowels interact with one another.
Which is great for even us because
we were reading it and we were
I
just
was
like,
reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, I love this.
It makes so much sense.
This is why that R does what it does. Open and close.
That being said, I will probably mispronounce your name. I apologize. Minoic? We're going to go with Minoic. I'm going to say Minoic. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. Don't laugh at me, dude.
I'm laughing at Eric.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
No, she was saying she's waiting for you to pronounce her cousin's name, which is lots of vowels.
Right. How do you separate work and private time? I'm studying and teaching, and I'm struggling to juggle both of those things, and also have time for myself. So look, there's a couple of things. This guy that I really like, Jesse Itzler, who's an entrepreneur, says, be where your feet are. So Brody got a new video game. He started playing this game called Minecraft Dungeons, right? It's a really fun game. I play it because he likes it, right? Like I enjoy hanging out with him, but it's like, sure, if that's what we're doing or we're watching Steven Universe, I don't really care about Steven Universe. It's not my favorite show, but I watch it because Brody watches it. But when I'm doing Minecraft Dungeons, I often don't even bring my phone upstairs with me. I just am upstairs and I'm in this for the duration of time that we're playing this together, and this is where I am. When I'm at school, I never, ever, ever do real Rap with Reynolds work at school. When I'm at school, I'm 100% doing what I'm doing. When I'm talking to a student, I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not grading something and they're talking and I'm like, yeah, I'm hearing, I'm listening to you. It's like, nope, I stop. I will eat and talk to a student, but I don't ever do like work on something that's needs to be done, a task, while talking to a student. When I'm hanging with my wife, it's the same thing. When we're watching TV at night, it's often the same thing. Unless the TV show gets boring, I start looking at social media. But I'm trying to do whatever it is that I'm doing. Now, here's the beauty of that. When you are super hyper-focused in and you're just doing emails, that's all you're doing, it takes far less time because now you're not on your phone a little bit. You're not talking to your husband while he's washing dishes. You're not letting the dog out. You're not like doing other things. You're just doing this one thing. You are where your feet plant you. I think that frees up a lot of time. I also chunk my activities. So I will say things like, I have a lot of emails to get to. I have 100 emails in my box, but I have 20 minutes right now. So I'm going to get focused. I'm going to do emails for 20 minutes. I'm going to, call the herd real quick and like clear out as much nonsense as there is in there and just clear it out. And then just start answering back to the ones that need to be answered back to. That helps too, because you're giving yourself a time thing. And there's something called Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law says that an activity takes as much time as we give it. And so if you know that you have to get your house clean because tomorrow you're having company over, your house takes all day to freaking clean. If we know someone's coming over in 10 minutes, you'd be amazed at how quickly this house gets cleaned up when someone's coming over in 10 minutes. And
that's
don't want
because
to look
I
at
have tactics like hide the dishes in the oven.
Yeah, but that's... We do that.
I'm not so sure that it's cleaning.
Which turns into a whole other issue when the other person's using the oven and they didn't know that person was hiding dishes in the oven. And we're all like, does anyone smell burning? And it's like, oh, the dishes are in the oven. So it's like, I think that's part of it. And then knowing this, right? In life, there's always work there's always still work to do, right? So there's always ongoing work, but you don't want as unfinished business. So it's like getting the things done that you need to get done so you can meet deadlines and be true to your word. But there's never like, there's always something else I can work on my house. There's always something else I can do in the garden. There's always something else to talk to my wife about. There's always more schoolwork that needs to be done. But it's like, if I'm chunking my time and scheduling myself, then I find I have a hell of a lot more time on my hands and it can get a lot more done than if I'm just, going from one place to the other. And writing lists. I write lists I have a list over here of 100 things that I'm working on right now. It just helps me get it out of my head and know and see in front of me what needs to be done, and I can cross off the list. Anna's asking, how are you able to emphasize actual learning and life skills while still adhering to state standards that unfortunately focus mostly on standardized tests? So, and I never teach to the test, ever. And I don't do that because I believe in it. And I think that if we are really teaching students things, we can teach what we're going to teach, and then it will be evident when they get to the test that they're ready for it, with the exception of like bias that are in tests, right? So like tests are not created equal. They're not created with all students in mind. And an example of that would be like my students taking a test, and one year I was reading like I had like the state science test I had to read to the students that needed someone to actually read it to them. And I remember like reading things about like a manatee, and I read this passage about a manatee, and the student, when I get done, I go, "You guys good? Do you need me to read it again?" They're like, "You have a question. What the hell's a manatee?" And I was like, bro, like a sea cow. And they're like, "What's a sea cow?" And I'm like, I don't know how to explain a manatee any other way. It looks like it's like a fat dolphin that's slow. Like how do you explain a manatee? But it was like, if the student doesn't know what the hell a manatee is, how the hell is supposed to answer the question, right? Or if there was another one about coral reefs, and it was explaining the different types of coral. But it's like, if students do not have the base knowledge of what that's about, then the test is kind of, the odds are stacked against them. So that sort of stuff I try to shed a light on, or at least let students know, like, look, there are going to be things they're going to talk about that you're not going to know what the hell they're talking about right here. But and try and gear them up for that. But I find that those spaces, though, so let's say even if you had to teach the test, let's say that you have a curriculum, you have a textbook, you have a way that you're supposed to scope and sequence you're supposed to go through. I think it comes with sprinkling magic. And what I liken this to is, if you buy a boxed cake, and that boxed cake, you can look on the front at exactly what it's supposed to look like, right? So like, I'm not like recreating the wheel here. I'm not going to like add a little bit more flour because I feel like it, or some cornstarch, or an extra egg just because I, felt like that's a good move. Everyone, like, the boxed cake is prepared in such a way because they know the boxed cake works, right? So maybe the textbook is good. Maybe you have a decent textbook, a good curriculum that's been thought about. What can I do to sprinkle magic on it? What can I do? What kind of icing am I putting on the cake? What kind of way am I going to decorate it? How am I going to present it? Like, what kind of platter is it on? And what else is on the table at the same time? So like, the cake's the cake, but like, what are you doing to it, right? Like, chicken's chicken. Some people just make it well, and some people are terrible at making it. So that's part of what I'm thinking about. And so what that might look like is, what is a journal entry that taps into the humanity part of my students, or in a bigger, more complex question, or something that they're wondering about on the front end? How can I have supplementary materials that might say, Lord of the Flies is this, but like, it's, how can I tie that into the lives of my students actually living in West Philadelphia? How can I take the ideas in Fahrenheit 451, V for Vendetta, Persepolis? Like, Persepolis is a story about a little girl growing up during the Iranian Revolution. So like the only way I get my students to care about that is if I can tie it into their life. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to, wherever we get an opportunity, to create that space for our students. And it doesn't always have to be this overwhelming, like, overdoing or like undoing of the curriculum and then building something new. It can just be sprinkling magic in between. And I just think that works really, really well. And it's a good practice for educators to do. Mr. James Pete is asking, question, what do you do in a district in which the staff is full with implicit bias towards race, but they don't see it? My district has a small group of Black and brown students, but predominantly white. I grew up in the district, but moved to Raleigh and taught in an inner city school for 17 years. My growth was immense in diversity and race. I came home to help students not be as ignorant as I was. I feel like is there another part to that?
Well, I
that was
know.
the end?
I think that was it.
Okay. So James, this is an awesome question, right? So like, what do you do? And I've talked to a lot of educators about this with regards to like, when people can't see their implicit bias, right? Which is the basis of implicit bias, is like, you are operating from a place where you don't even know that what you're doing is biased or racist or sexist or privileged or whatever, right? I think it is, there's a couple of things. I've talked to a number of folks recently about the fact that, like, I have not been vocal before now, right? This is me saying this out loud. I've not been vocal before now about hashtag Black Lives Matter, right? But I've posted a number of things lately. Part of the reason for that is I like to live or think that I'm living in a particular way that is, I'm living that out. I'm not just talking about it. I'm not just saying it. I'm not just posting it. They're not just words, right? I am living from a place where I know where I teach. I know the students that I teach. I know the community that I'm a part of. I know the families that I am working with in tandem to help their students. And I like to think that what I'm doing is that out loud. Right now, though, it feels like, no, this is the time to be vocal. Like, I don't want it to be lost in the sauce. But I do like this idea of St. Francis saying, preach always, and when necessary, use words. I very seldom talk about my faith, even on YouTube amongst my friends. What I'm doing is living it out. And I think I think it's in tandem. I don't think that it means being just silent, right? If something comes up, say something. If you feel like it's the moment, if you feel like it's a time where you can share, you can shine light on something, do it. But I think it comes down to living that out. I think it comes down to letting all students know that they're cared for and that this is a safe space for everyone. Not shying away from difficult matters. Teaching students to look a little bit deeper under the cover of, like, what is this text actually saying? Like, can we see some of the other things that are going on here with regards to race, sex, bigotry, racism, whatever that is, and digging deeper. So I think that is good, because back to the other piece I was saying, you're teaching kids about curiosity and standing up for themselves and feeling like they can inform themselves in the right way. So if I was in that school, I would be living that as best I could. So that looks like making sure that, like, look, I don't have to, like, my students know. I hasten to really make this about me, but I'm the only example that I really have, right? Like, in terms of, like, I know me better than I know other people, and it's, so I want to speak to that. My classroom, if there's a story in my book where talk about there was a cohort of students that used to hang in my room every single day, right? And all of these students were, like, LGBTQ part of that community. They would come in every day. They would get, like, because all of our students, like, don't live close to one another. So they would come in with, like, whatever new wig they got, whatever new shoes they got. And then they would put on, like, Lady Gaga, and they would, like, parade around my room and have fun and laugh and talk and, like, be who they were. It was a literal safe space. One day I had students come in from the lacrosse team, and they were late getting to school. Or, like, their game got pushed back or something, so they just need a place to chill. They ordered food. They come in my room. They see what's going on, which essentially looks like a catwalk. I mean, it's like the music's on and the lights are on, and it is this kind of fantastic madness happening in my room. And this kid looks at me and he goes, "You get down with this, Reynolds?" And I said, "Bro, like, is that even a question?" And he goes, yeah, I got you. Like, he knew that, like, my room was a space that was safe for all students, that I didn't have to, like, tell everyone. Now, look, if it comes up, I'm not afraid to, I'm not shy to, like, talk about that stuff. But, like, I am, like, trying to make it so that it's, like, not even a question. So all that to say, like, I just think that that's part of the space is, like, don't back away from it. Don't shy away from it, but make sure that what you're doing is living it out loud and along with saying it out loud as well. I probably could have just said that without my whole long story, but, that's how I roll sometimes. Luis Lopez is saying, nearly left teaching for a PR job. Offer was rescinded and re-opted back into my teaching contract. How do I tell them my focus and love for the children hasn't wavered? So, Luis, this is a great question. I know a lot of educators that really, really love students, but really love education, really want to be teachers. But, like, when you have enough kids, or if you have, so, and I'm not saying this was your situation, but, like, if you need to leave because you're not making the money, that's a real thing. Like, I have a very good friend that is all about the kids. It comes back all the time whenever we have an event, whenever we have like a ceremony or something like that. My friend Taz comes back all the time. But he left because he wasn't making enough money. Like, he couldn't afford to live in Philadelphia anymore and get paid a teacher's salary. And part of the reason we started Real Rap with Reynolds also was, like, with the hope that, like, this would supplement our income at some point. Because if my wife is homeschooling our children who need that, and we're living on my salary, we cannot live. We do not make enough money unless I am riding a skateboard across the bridge to work and eating top ramen every single day. Like we just.
I'm not even so sure that we
can
afford
like
clothes.
Maybe if we lived in a van, we could afford it, but it's just not possible. So I think that teaching is tough, and that if they want someone back that actually cares about the students, then they would take you back. And so here's the thing to remember. We cannot control how other people are going to process what we think, say, or do. I have said things online that people have taken a completely different way than what I meant. I've said things to students or text friends that were like, that was really offensive. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I was literally just asking this question, but it gets lost in translation sometimes. So I think it's about being as earnest, about as honest and straightforward and vulnerable as you can be. And then that is the gift you are giving them. How they choose to interact with that gift is completely up to them, and you really cannot do anything about that. And I just think that's a really important thing to remember. Best of luck, man. What you got there, dude?
Sorry,
sifting through. Oh, you were reading other people's stuff.
Well, Mr. James Pete had some good follow-up things.
What, people talking about it?
No, just him. He was saying that it's like his situation at his school is a community problem, and he has some ideas, but school isn't acknowledging like the problem. Like, so I guess his school is saying like, oh, there's no problem here. And even within their community. So it's like, how does he really make active change? But he's saying he needs to start in his classroom.
Well, that's like our friend in Utah. You know who I'm talking about. I don't want to say his name on the internet, but
yes.
That taught at a school. And we were talking about race at some point. This was years ago. And he said he asked his students, which are predominantly white, upper middle class population in Utah, and said like, if the student said something like, yeah, well, you know, it's not like that anymore. Like race isn't really an issue. Racism isn't really an issue in America anymore. And he was just like, what? But look, you know, it depends on where you live, right? So it's almost like the one of the things I think is interesting in all of this is, you know, some people just don't know. And I hasten to fault people for that, right? I hasten to come down on them. Yes, it's important to help wake them up, to get them to understand what's happening. That's really a problem.
You have to meet everybody, even when it comes to racism. Like everybody has a starting point, right? And so if we're willing to do that with children, I think we have to be willing to do that with people.
With everyone.
I mean, I argued with someone the other day on Facebook and they're an elderly person, and not argued. I just shared like some new insights that they might not have known.
In a very forceful way.
No, actually I didn't.
I'm just playing.
But it's just about meeting. In my mind, I think, oh my gosh, how do you not know these like basic things? But it's like, no, of course, like you're old and you're in your bubble, and if you're surrounded, you know, you just have to meet people where they are. I think it's about continuing and growing the conversation.
That's students.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, you don't teach someone that's on a second grade reading level and you go, well, look, bro, you're in ninth grade. We're reading ninth grade level text, right? You're going to lose them. You have to meet people where they are, and not where we wish they were,
right?
Or not where we expect they were. And when we do that, I think we are showing grace to people, and then that helps people grow.
Right. It doesn't excuse anything.
Foolish. They don't feel stupid. Right. They don't feel like they're being schooled by someone, but rather you're educating, helping to educate someone in what's really happening. And I think that's in school all the time, like with students. Like when kids like explode on me sometimes because I say something, or I ask them to stop talking, or I tell them to stop, you know, can you not? I'll say like, I've literally had kids where I'm like, can you not stab him with your pencil? You're always yelling at me. And I'm like, no, it was because you just stabbed him with your pencil. I was bringing it, like asking you not to like violate another person, you know, with your pencil. And they lose it. And so I can't go like, why does that kid always have to do that? Why is it always an explosion? It's like, dude, I don't know what their story is. So when you find out someone's story, what you do is you find out the reason for their behavior, not an excuse, but a reason. And then you work from that space to help them in the best way that you can. I think that's kind of what that comes down to. Sam is asking, how do we as authority figures ensure that the students' interpersonal relationships, friends or other, are healthy and fair? Is it our responsibility to do this in the first place? Are you shaking your head? No?
No.
Because I think yes.
Yeah, it is. But can you control every like nuance of a situation? I don't
No.
think.
So here's what
Right,
you do. When
that's
you go
what I'm
into
saying.
education, a couple of things. One, when folks say things, like when I first started teaching it, I had a friend that I remember Nina said this to me. Nina was like, yeah, but CJ, if you can help one kid, it's worth it. And I'm like, bro, if in a 30-year career, if I help one person, I need to get the hell out of the business. That's like if I have a restaurant and I can serve just one person. It's just like, what? Like that? Like, no, that's not good enough, man. But I've been doing this long enough to know that I am not going to be able to help every single student. And it's not my job to help every single student. It is my job to help the ones that I can help, right? I'm part of a community. It is not a solo venture, man. It's not boxing. It's more like, I don't know, like the Bad News Bears of baseball, right? Typically is what I feel like we're doing. And so when we're doing that, I will sit with students all the time before school, after school, during lunch, and we're just sitting around and talking. And I'll hear like how someone treats someone else, or how they say something to someone else, or that these guys keep dogging this guy because he's fat, or because his skin is a certain color, so like if he's particularly dark, or because of the way that he talks, or because he has a lisp, or because of whatever, right? Whatever it is, and I just tell them no, like not in here. Like I'm all about making fun of each other. I'm all about that back and forth, that banter, that fun. But if it's fun, if it's silly, if we're just having if it's us just kind of going back and forth, I think there's a value in that. Students get to know things like limits and stuff like that. But when someone takes it past the limit, you got to go, no, you're making it not safe in here for other people. And this is a safe space for everybody. So you need to be mindful of that, or break it down. Bro, let's talk about why we don't do that. Let's talk about why we don't fat shame people. Let's talk about things like why we don't talk about so we're all boys school. There's a lot of talk all the time amongst the boys of like they go to the school because girls are a distraction. It's like, no, stop there. Girls are not a distraction. Let's talk about that. And then you help them to unpack it. Because, to be honest, one, if you want kids to not act a certain way in your class, make them know that they're going to have a conversation about it every time. They're not just getting their hand slapped for it or something like that, or getting reprimanded. Not that I would slap a student, just saying. It was metaphor, sort of. But it is that you are going to actually have the conversation with them. The second thing you're doing is just letting kids know that there's that's lazy put down stuff, man. And sometimes I think kids don't even mean it. But it's like what you're saying then is lazy, and you're just saying this thing because you've gotten used to it or whatever. So if kids say stop being gay, this is said so much in school. My guys know, stop. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about why this is problematic. Let's talk about why you would say that. Let's talk about, did you really mean that he was gay? Let's talk about, what does it mean to be gay? What is that? What are you even trying to say when you say that? Or if someone says that someone's retarded, it's like, oh, stop. Let's stop there. But my students, a lot of them say it all the time, right? So it's not my job to judge. It's my job to call attention, to shine a light on the thing that I think that's happening is unhealthy or not right, or is making it not a safe space for everyone else. And it's having those conversations with students. Janelle is asking, how do your students handling everything that's going on and finishing up the school year? Are you giving more leeway in assignments because of this? Yeah, so Janelle, I've been giving a lot of leeway with regards to the school year to begin with. So my elective has only gotten one lesson a week, and it's very, very short and sweet. That's my history of hip hop class. My English class is, I give 2 assignments a week that should only take 10 minutes to do, and 10 to 15 minutes. So they're getting 20, 30 minutes of work a week from me, because I am very clear on the idea that not all of my students have good internet. Not all of them have families that are mom and dad are still working and now they're taking care of their brothers and sisters. So it's being mindful of that. With regards to all the stuff that's happening with Black Lives Matter and with the death of George Floyd, yeah, I think, my students aren't ones that for some reason, when I call you on the phone, they're not as apt to share with me what's going on. If we were in school, no kidding, the day after George Floyd was murdered, I would have had kids come in and say like, Reynolds, can you believe what's going on with George Floyd? Like, what do you think about that? And then it would be like from the jump, like that's all we would have done for days in school is like unpack that, talk about some of this stuff, talk about all the things that are going on in the news right now. But on the phone, it's just not the same. And I'm not sure why that is. I mean, maybe there's some sort of like social scientists out there that would be able to speak to that. But so it's been tough. What I've been trying to do is on social media and in just text and phone calls is just communicating to students I'm thinking about them and that I care about them. And I think that oftentimes, especially in this time of like this pandemic that we're all living through, it is students, I don't want them to feel forgotten. I don't want them to think that I'm not thinking about them. I don't want them to think that they're going through this alone or to think that like, if we're not in school, then I don't care as much. So even, periodically through the summer, my goal is to still text kids or call kids or use WhatsApp or whatever, I can to just check in and see how everybody's doing because I want them to feel cared for. So I'd say there's a lot going on in a lot of students' minds. And I just hope that they're being safe and they're being responsible and they are, doing what they're doing. But it's like we started doing home visits last week where the school asked, or 2 weeks ago, where certain teachers were going to students' houses, sitting on the porch with them and helping them do work. And I was asked to do that, but it's like, I can't. I have 2 little ones at home. Like I can't risk going somewhere and doing something like that when I have babies at home. And so like
and we all rely on you.
Yeah. And so, and I'm the primary income I'm the only income in our house, but like, but if I was a young educator and I didn't have kids yet, or if my kids were grown and out of the house, I would 100% be, I'd probably be more apt to be at more rallies, more walks, be at students' houses, connecting with families like one-to-one more. But not when things like this are going on. I have not. Alicia is asking, any ideas for a 5 to 7 Zoom ELA lesson to teach? I think, Alicia, your job in 5 to 7 minutes should be connecting students with something else. So I wouldn't be like reading to them or writing with them or something like that. It would be, how do I create engagement? How do I immediately, as soon as they come on, they see something behind me, I have something on, there's certain music playing, there's something that's setting up the engagement, hooking them in, then I'm going to drop some knowledge for like 1 to 2 minutes and get them engaged in what I'm talking about, right? So like I'm drumming up the engagement and then leave them with the assignment that is going to make them want to go do whatever the thing is, right? So if you go on IGTV, I only posted like 4 or 5 of the videos that I made, but they're like videos that I made for students where I try to model that for educators. It's like, here's what we're doing. Here's how I'm setting this up in this very simplistic way. And I think that is a really cool way to get kids excited. And so what you're using is your 5 to 7 minutes to get them excited about the reading, the questions, the writing activity, the word problems, the biology assignment that they have to do. That's what I would focus on in that 5 to 7.
I don't know what time we started.
So we're at 1:08. This keeps the timer. I'm good to keep going. I really want coffee bad, but
I shall make you some.
I would love to have some coffee right now. All the stores near our house started opening up and having coffee available again, so you can just go in. Yeah. And I'm just like, I saw it yesterday and I wanted some so bad at Wawa, and I was like, can't do it, bro. Like, I don't know who was in here. I don't know how often they wipe those things off. I feel like they should have like a thing where like maybe you could bring in like your own stick and like use the handle that way, so I don't have to touch anything.
You could just use some hand sanitizer afterwards.
It just felt wrong.
Let's make your own.
We've quarantined so hard that I'm just like, what? Talk to you across the street? Are you crazy?
Dang. Chris Chung has 2 more weeks of school.
Chris Chung.
Wow.
That's a lot of extra schooling to do.
Sorry.
KRCL. I'm not sure. So that's the profile name. What do you do when you feel like you're hitting your head repeatedly, trying to find an in education? Is this a normal problem to have? I can't seem to shadow or volunteer with my local district. I think that says district. And it's making me feel like I'm not meant to do this work. So what would I do with that? Because that would be my go-to answer, right? Would be volunteering, putting your time in somewhere. I would say this. There have been any number of times in my life where it just wasn't working, right? So like if I look at YouTube, there were people that had bigger numbers than I did. There were people that had more subscribers, that had more views, that were getting opportunities that I wasn't getting. But I know that this is work I've been given to do. I know that this is missional without a doubt. I can feel it in my heart that I need to, that this is what I've been given to do right now. When I can remember that, that's why over 4 years later, I'm still on YouTube. I'm still doing what I'm doing. And a lot of other educators have fallen by the wayside because it is knowing your why so strongly that there's no doubt that you should be doing this. And I often think, and look, maybe this is too woo-woo or whatever, but like that if opportunities have passed me by, they weren't opportunities for me, man. There's like, it's like that something better comes along. And this sounds like just kind of rainbowy and unicorny or like wishful thinking, but I can just point to too many times in my life where that's happened, where I've watched two people partner together and they start something. I'm like, yo, how come they didn't ask me to partner? How come that speaking engagement didn't get me to jump on board? How come I didn't get that business opportunity? But then what happens is I do end up getting something. I'm like, yo, I couldn't have done this if I was doing that thing. And this is far more lucrative. I couldn't have spoken at these 4 places if I'd taken that one gig for 4 days at that school. Now I'm speaking at 4 different places over 4 days and making a lot more money and having a lot more impact. I would say to me, it is, here's what I'm going to break it down like this. I have my life planned out. I know exactly what I want and I know what I want it to look like. I don't always know how I'm going to get there. So what I've been thinking of, literally, it's so funny this comes up because I just had this conversation with my wife this morning and I'm really excited about this idea. And so much so that I just clapped and that was weird. What if I don't know where anything's going that I'm working on, right? But I'm actually putting the work into myself so that no matter what comes up, I'm ready to go. So if my editing skills are as good as they can get, if my lighting and my camera and my microphone are as good as they can get, if my book is, as when I'm writing it, is as good as it can get, what if my health's as good as it can get? So that what if a number of districts hit me up and they said, we want you to speak 27 days in a row this July. Can I do it? 100%. Because I run, I exercise, I pay attention to what I'm eating, except for the whole bag of Milano Pepperidge Farm cookies I ate all by myself last night. But no judgment. It is me knowing as much, learning as much, creating the mindset that I want, being physically fit enough to take on anything. So when you can't get the job, are you still learning? Are you still growing? Are you still looking at lesson plans? Are you still trying to think about how you would teach stuff? Are you still looking at like things that are happening in culture right now and how you would implement them into your classrooms? Are you touching base with other teachers and asking thoughtful questions? Are you in the Facebook group? Are you in other people's Facebook groups? Are you on like live chats, like whether it's the Teach Like a Pirate chat that happens on Twitter, or the Hip Hop Ed chat that happens on Twitter that I'm a part of each week? It's watching and getting to know other educators in social media. And then if they have a live feed, are you in there? Are you learning stuff? Are you preparing yourself? So what you're doing is you are creating this individual that when that opportunity comes, you like nothing can stop you because you're so prepared, you're ready to go. And I think when we think about things in that way, you're not waiting for someone. You're on 100% offense, bro. I'm just waiting for the deal to show up. My eyes are peeled. Which is such a weird saying. I'm always on the lookout. I'm like checking the ads. I'm on the internet. I'm talking to people. I'm letting folks know that I need a job. But in the meantime, I'm preparing. You're training like you're a fighter or a runner. and you're always getting ready. And so that's something that I've really been thinking of. My wife is doing shadow boxing moves next to me in the kitchen right now, which is really fun. I just try not to look over at you, but it is that's how I'm thinking about it. And then get in the Facebook group and say like, hey, does anyone know of any jobs that are opening? Or hit it up in the side. Tell people where you live and like where they can get in touch with you and like whether they know anything. And you know, you just don't know where the opportunity is going to come from, but you can prepare for the opportunity. The Apple Corp's company, I think. I don't. Okay, we'll go with it. Question: Post teacher, I want to write a book. Best way to fight through writer's block. So look, I just kept writing. Here's the funny part. I have a lot of stories about education, but I never thought about writing a book. I also never thought about making YouTube videos. But when it came time to write a book, and I already have like another book in mind, we were just talking about this morning. It's like, I'm not sure I'm ready. I don't think I know all the things, but if I just kept writing every day. So like every day it was either I had 2 places that I wrote. I like really narrowed it down. It was either at Starbucks in a town that's not close to mine, so I wasn't going to see people I knew coming in. I sat at the same place. I had the same small black coffee every single day, sat in the same spot. And if I went in there and someone was in my spot, I did have a fallback spot, but as soon as someone left, bam, I was up in that seat right away. Because I wanted it to be the same thing. I didn't want to think about, I wanted to strip away decision-making opportunities. I didn't want to think about where I was going to sit or what I was going to wear or what music I was going to listen to. It was sitting at Starbucks. It was the Cold War Kids Pandora station. Which was the same songs over and over and over again. It was the same drink, and then trying to just write. And it wasn't writing because it was good. It wasn't writing because it was funny or that people were going to like it. It was just writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And I think that's how you get through anything. I was just reading about this idea today that like most people don't achieve their goals because they're not ready for the dip, right? Seth Godin he's the entrepreneur, talks about the dip where it's like you have to mentally prepare on the front end. We all know that we want to have abs. I don't know one person that doesn't want to have abs. But when you are like, yes, this is awesome. You know what, man? Babe, I'm getting abs this summer. I'm going to ab this up, right? You're going to be able to rub spoons and it's going to make noise. I don't know. That was freaking weird. But you know, several weeks in, the dip is going to happen. Scientifically proven. But if you can get through the dip, then you graduate high school, then you graduate college, then you have a great marriage, then you have abs, then you ran the marathon. But it's mentally preparing on the front end for that sort of thing. And so that's what I think the answer to that is. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just keep writing, no matter what. Write about anything, but as long as you're writing. Because then that just gets you into the practice of not giving up. So Samantha is asking, I'm new to the channel and I am an aspiring teacher. Awesome. What grade level do you teach? How many students are in your class maximum? And has your school made any changes yet for COVID-19 adjustment? So Samantha, I teach 9th grade literature and I teach an elective called the History of Hip Hop in West Philly. My students it varies. I will have classes that are sometimes as small as 15 to 20, but usually more closer to like 30 or 31 students in a class. And so that it has a huge shift, obviously, on what my classes can look like and the sort of things that we can do. And mostly, and I was just thinking about this morning too, because as an educator, you're sort of beholden to who else is teaching in your room. So like, if it was up to me, I got a comment on Instagram recently where someone saw a picture of my classroom and they were like, must be nice to have small classes. And I said, what are you talking about? And they were like, we have so few desks in your room. And I'm like, no, that's because no one wants to sit in a desk. Like I have very few kids that like want a desk. They'd rather have a clipboard and sit on the windowsill, sit on the couch, lay on the floor, whatever. My ultimate classroom would have no regular desks in it, but would just have places to work or like a large table, like Game of Thrones style, that we'd all sit around and have like this kind of family style education situation. So with regard to COVID, we did distance learning, but with no real thought as to what that was going to look like. And I don't know that that's the fault of the school even, because we were literally like at school on Thursday. I was watching a John Oliver piece with my students because they were getting worried about COVID. We watched it that day. We talked about it. I said, I'll see you on Monday because we had off on Friday. And that was it. Friday, they called school for the next 2 weeks. And then it was 2 weeks more and 2 weeks more and 2 weeks more. So we have had to try and figure this out. But one of the things I love about my school, though, is that I have this guy, Joel, that I work with, who's the director of curriculum. And he's about making this work for kids however you can. So he was always like digging up resources, digging up like things that we could do with our students, looking at what we were posting on Google Classroom and then giving us feedback like, hey, you didn't really address this, or I think this lesson would have been better if you broke it down. And they really moved with what we were doing, because there was a thought on the front end that we had to do live Zoom calls with students, which is like a total nightmare scenario, because not everyone has good Wi-Fi. Not everyone has a house that they want you to see what it looks like. Not everyone has, enough internet for everyone at the same time to be on. Not everyone has enough devices in the house for all the families in there to be on there. So the school really moved with that stuff a lot. And so that's kind of been the experience so far, because it's access. My school is a lot of our students deal with not having access to a lot of things they would need to be able to be on school, school online.
She's in her final year to be a math teacher, and she's in Jamaica. And she said, for my teaching practice, I had almost 50 students. Do you think it would be easy to be effective as a teacher?
So I taught in South Central Africa and Zambia for a little while, and I had probably 50 or 60 students in a class, no lights on the ceiling. Even the chalkboard was it was like this really bumpy situation. So it was like you couldn't even write neatly on the board. It was difficult, but I'll say this, and I don't know how it is in Jamaica, but I know that when I was teaching in Zambia, my students didn't have other options, and they knew it. It was all girls school, and I would talk to the girls between classes, and they said, you're either going to be a mother or you're going to get an education. And being a mother's not bad, but it was that was your only opportunity in life, was to get married and to have babies and provide children for your husband. But that wasn't, you weren't choosing your life then. It was being chosen for you. So school was really, really serious. So kids didn't mess around. They didn't want my jokes. They didn't want my silliness. They didn't want fun lessons. I was no, I want to learn the stuff so I can get better and have the life that I want. So let's not mess around. So it was a much different situation. So I think it's going to depend on that. I would really consider, look, and again, I've been to Jamaica, but I know about some of the, what that kind of looks like, and the poverty that folks are dealing with there and stuff of that nature. To me, it's about really selling kids on why they're there, and that this is actually worth something. We're not just here to go to school because it's state mandated or because your parents sent you here. It's no, what you all don't realize is that I am going to ride for you like no one has ever before. That I want you to do the best, to live the life you dream of. And I will do anything to make that happen. And then explaining why you're doing anything in school, why you are teaching the stuff that you're teaching, why the rules are the way the rules are, why the policies are the way that the policies are, to let students know that that's it. And then especially thinking about somewhere that's on an island, my guess would be that your students don't always have access to get other places or go other places. Many of my students don't leave West Philadelphia, or they don't leave their block. It's about creating access. And I think, not to go on too long about this, because I have a lot that I could say about this. I would really, can you give me an ice cube, buddy? It is creating access by using things like Zoom or Skype, if those are accessible to you. And this has had a great impact on my class, where I will actually find people on social media that I think are fascinating. And with this idea of, if you can see it, you can be it. And what that means is most of my students either want to be ball players or they want to be rappers, right? And when I talk to them about that, or YouTubers, and because that's what they've seen people that have come from their situation do. They don't know that they could be a chef or own a business or be an entrepreneur. They don't know that they could start a company. They don't know that they could be a copywriter or editor or an artist or any number of other things that exist because they just haven't seen it yet, right? So what you're doing is you are inviting folks in that either look like your students or come from a similar situation from your students. So not everyone I have, like it could be like an Asian woman that was an immigrant from Vietnam that is going to speak to my students. But she came up hard. She came up like grinding. And that's what I want my students to see. And so you're creating opportunities through this virtual platform to connect with your students. And that is worth its weight in gold because then you just step back. You're not the teacher saying, this is what you have to do, or this is important because it's on the test. Someone's going, no, I've been where you are. I've been in your shoes, and this is what I've done, and no one can take that from me. And that is the most powerful thing I've ever really been able to do for my students, besides just tell them that I love them. What you got? Oh, my man, John Lopez. John Lopez, we were cracking up when I finally opened your email yesterday, and your picture was in there.
It's so fun to put a picture, like
to put a face to someone.
Yes,
and not that, no, we were laughing at your picture, but we were just like, I like was on the email doing it, and I like took a picture of. I go, yo, this is what John Lopez looks like, and then we were just laughing. So, question: What was a professional development training?
He looks like we need to sit down and have that same beer with him.
A Guinness.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
was that what it was?
Yeah, he was drunk. He was
Oh.
Guinness.
Yeah, I love Guinness.
What was a professional development training that inspired you? We had a professional development training last year that was based around, it was with regard to special education best practices, but it was far more social emotional. And man, if I could remember this guy's name, I'd even shout him out. It was so good. Like, look, I'm going to say it right here. I'd say 90% of the time that we have professional development, if I feel like it is not worth my time or energy, I will pretend that I have a phone call and I leave the room and I go take my phone call, but really means I just go to my room and do work or helping students or tutoring someone or something like that, right? It's like my time is better spent doing this. That was so good though that I had to even go tell the guy that he did such a great job, because what it did was like, it was a guy who was a lawyer who he was an advocate for students and like did pro bono work as that. And he was talking about like the ins and outs of like the system and how students show up to your room and how can they possibly be on a second grade reading level when they're in the 9th grade, and just unpacked all this great stuff with regards to special education and social emotional learning that just taught me so much and hit my heart so heavy that I was like, dude, this guy is all about the work. And I love, like, it was like all I could talk about. And then there was another woman I have her book in the other room, but she came to our school and talked about how educating boys is different than educating girls, which I was immediately, at first I was like, this seems weird. But she just talked about like some scientific, like she just talked about stuff that was like based in science, based in research, and said like, here are big ways that boys are going to operate differently than girls in the classroom. And it was really eye-opening to me, and I took a lot away from it. Now, that same PD pissed a lot of people off too, but I mean, I just thought it was really fascinating, and it really resonated with me a lot, and even made me look at the way I had grown up and learned differently, because I was like, damn, that's what I was like in high school. I remember when a teacher would come at me that way too, I would feel this type of way. Or like, I remember it was like, no, this is true because I can relate it to my own experience. What you got there, dude? Drinking coffee.
I forget where it was. I hit the wrong button.
Do you remember the question?
No.
Now we skip someone.
Dang it.
They're lost in the sauce. How about you give me another question and then just go try and look for it? Or is that not possible?
No, I can.
Take this one right here?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Pete is asking, question 2. My wife mostly wants to tackle me when it comes to...
What is it?
It says, my wife mostly wants to tackle me when it comes to my teaching career. You guys are an incredible team. Any insight on professional development for creating that dynamic team? Wife, why are we a dynamic team? I think we are. I think we're awesome.
I think we're a dynamic team, but man, has it come with a lot of work and a lot of discussions and a lot of learning how each other work and respecting that enough to like, you know, I have to make changes to understand how you work, and you have to make changes to understand and respect how I work as a human being. And it's that work that we put in with each other that leads to an amazing outcome.
So that
like
work
a partnership.
looks like to me, part of it, I'll say this. We had an argument the other day. You said something to me that I didn't like how you said it or whatever. We don't have to get into the ins and outs of it. But the bottom line was I had to check myself because I thought you were trying to like intentionally hurt my feelings or something along those lines. And then it was when I remembered, Pete, that like, when I remember that my wife and I are literally like, I don't take marriage vows lightly. Like I think it is like literally a covenant that we have made. And the thing that I think is so, to take this even further, that's so beautiful about marriage is when you're married, it's like, no, this thing's going to work no matter what. And so it is, I had to check myself and just remember my wife isn't trying to do something to intentionally harm me, right? I have to get that out of my head, right? I have to throw that away. I know that she loves me. I know that no matter what, she cares about me. I know that no matter what, she's going to back me, at least publicly. And then if we have to have a conversation about that later, we can. But it's ride or die. And so when you are rooted in that, you know that no matter what the conversation is, no matter how heated the battle gets, we are still loving one another. And that's the bottom line. And then
I've always come back to intention. I always say, like, if he gets mad at something that I did or said, and I always have to remind, like, well, know me, like, know my intention. What's the intention behind who I am to be as your wife and as a human being, that you know who I am, that my intention isn't to hurt your feelings. Now, I apologize if I did, and I obviously don't want to continue hurting your feelings. So I try and learn from those.
But real quick, even me,
those areas,
my feelings are really not hurt anymore if I know you didn't mean it. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like you check yourself. I think two other quick things that I take from us.
I cannot find
one is loving each other for who you are, not for who you want them to be, right? So that can go both ways. A friend of mine once told me that his wife was going through menopause and she was hot all the time. And he was like, dude, it was like the middle of the winter and my wife was hot. And she wanted to open the window every night. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to open the window. It's friggin' freezing in here. But she was having hot flashes. Get dog hair in my mouth. She was having hot flashes. So she decided to, like, she wanted to open the window. And his answer, he goes, this is how I answer those questions. For you, I open the window. Sometimes it's just conceding the point and saying, for you, we will eat chicken again. For you, we will go camping. I don't love camping, but if everyone wants to go, and I'm not doing it begrudgingly, and I'm not doing it passive aggressively, and I'm not doing it like so I can remind you later that, remember that time I went camping for you? Now you can't do this for me. But it is conceding the point and saying, for you, I open the window. And then the other piece is, I think when we were coming up, you're far more of an at-home body than I am. I like to going out to all the places with all the people, having all the conversations, talking all the time.
I love quarantine life.
Look, let's make this out. I'm the one that goes on the internet and talks to people that I can't see.
I stay right on the edge.
Yes. So, but you used to always want me to be home. Yeah. And so sometimes I will stay home now, but it's because I love you and I want you to have what you need. Like,
but the interesting part now, though, is that I don't ever say, like, when you go to, gosh, their school has so many, like, get-togethers. Like, oh, we're all going out because there's a bar, right?
And what do I say when I go? Babe, I'm going out. I'm only going to be like an hour.
I go, don't even tell me that. I go, no, don't tell me that. I go, because we both know that you're not, and I'm okay with you not, but don't set me up for false expectations. Like,
because I'm the last one every
So now I just go. I just know that you're out for the evening. Yeah. It's like, whatever, I'm good. But having those understandings of who we are and how we each operate, I think is key.
Yeah.
And I'm a slow one to learn all that, I'll say. Just putting that out there.
I mean, we're many, many years in now, but like,
Yes.
that's been some stuff. I think those
It
three
took a
things were
long
really
time to get there.
well, because it's not just noting those things, right? But putting them into practice over and over and over again. And I think we've done a good job of that.
Okay, here, this can be your last one.
Okay. Okay,
I was actually
got the coffee now. It's getting started.
I know you
ready to
probably
go
go for like 2 more hours. Actually, that question that we answered was the next one in line.
Oh, awesome. Howard is asking, do you recommend taking an in-depth training course regarding nonviolent communication from Marshall Rosenberg? Is this something that you know about or do you use? I don't. Now I'm going to look at. I'm actually going to screenshot this so I can remember to check that out. I don't know what that is. What I do know, look, let's say it like this. I went to community college and I went to a state school in New Jersey. That is not how I learn. I learn far more by seeing people do something and then watching them do it and then trying to do that myself. So I've had the honor of working with like some really great people like my friend Meeks and Cho and Nick Pascal is like a big person in education down in Texas. Those folks, I'm very keen on like observing people. And so like observing those two or those plus many other people and watching how they communicate with children or with young people in general has just showed me that like I never want to be in a power struggle with anyone, right? Like so like I would say I would border on saying that it makes me excited when angry parents come to my room. So I can't tell you how many times some teacher in another classroom are having parent-teacher conferences, some mom comes in, she's on a tear, and someone texts me like, oh my God, so-and-so's mom's on the way to the room now, and she is pissed at you. And I'm just like, all right. Because what I'm not looking, and the reason I like that is because I know I'm about to make this person's night. And the reason I know that is because when some mom, some grandmom, some dad comes in and they are pissed, look at these grades. Why'd you have this comment? My kid said that you did this. Whatever the anger is, I always tell them, one, here's what you need to know on the front end. I only care about your kid's success. That's all I want. And I'm willing to listen to anything you have to say if you feel like it's going to help me, help your student have a better time in my class and in our school. That's the bottom line. And parents just, I just spit a lot. Parents just don't hear that enough. And so when I think about nonviolent communication, it's doing things like I almost never raise my voice with students, but when I do, they know I mean it, and it's for a reason. It's like because things got way too out of control, and I need to snap it back in, right? But I don't want to raise my voice with students. It's about taking students into the hallway and saying, "Hey, man, can you talk to me in the hallway real quick?" And then using tactics like asking students, I see how you're being in class. Did I do something to make you angry, or is there something happening in class, like a dynamic that I'm unaware of? And then, so what I'm doing there is like not putting it on students right away and saying like, you're doing this in class, I don't want to see it again. It's like, I'm asking and I'm curious, back to that same piece as before, about what is it that might be going through your head right now that is making you upset? And did I have something to do with that? And then having that conversation. It's taking the audience away, which is why you're in the hallway and not in the classroom addressing something. It's following up with kids later because there's damn near no, like I never do detentions because they're worthless. I will do, hey, you got to come in after school and talk to me today. I want to hear about what you're thinking and feeling and where you're coming from. But that's not a detention. That's useless. That's like putting people in jail and just letting them sit there and rot. There's no rehabilitation happening there. So it's like trying to work through things with students because they can get there. They're growing, they're changing, they're developing. We need to be a part of that solution. And the way that we do that is by not coming down on students, but rather working through things with students. So although I don't know what that program is and I will look at it now, that's kind of where I come from. And that's just been best practice to me. Like I've never, ever, ever seen a teacher that has had a long lasting impact that screamed and yelled and went ballistic on their class. I've never seen it happen. I've never seen someone that's done damn near anything. And, the only thing folks do, like when they're screaming and yelling and carrying on, is get the other people that are screaming and yelling and carrying on, go, yeah, all right, this is what we do. Yeah, we yell and scream at everybody. Oh, yeah, this is what we do. But it's like, no one ever changes, right? I've never like changed one thought in my life because someone ever yelled at me. It's always been through conversation. It's always been through a sense of place of understanding and trying to come to a common ground. And I think when we're working with young people, that has to be the number one thing on our mind is how do I get you to succeed? And the only way I'm going to get you to succeed is if we're talking about this stuff. Is that it?
Well, I mean, that's up to you. You feel like you're on fire.
I mean, people are on here. Let's do a couple more. I'm half cup of coffee in. Let's do it. Getting hot back here, though. Part of the problem with working in your laundry room is there's no air conditioning back here.
It's not, because it used to be a porch.
It used to be a porch, and then the central air only reaches the rest of the house. This is my first world problem. Is the central air does not reach all the way back to the laundry room. Someone's doing laundry at a laundromat right now going, screw you, Reynolds. Like I get it. Like, we've been there also, and I hated the laundromat.
Yeah.
God, the laundromat sucked. Didn't you have cell phones back then? That you couldn't even sit on social or like.
No, I like that you say you. I sat at the laundromat.
I sat at the laundromat.
Did you?
Girl, I sat at the laundromat. I don't know what that was all about. I was getting amped.
Saw that.
Go ask those guys. Go ask them if they remember me. They remember me. Andrew is asking, when or how do you plan out your lessons for the year? I'll be teaching computer class for K through 8 students. I start look, I'm always planning, Andrew. I think that so right now we are in the middle of watching the Michael Jordan documentary that I know that all of my students are watching. I'm watching it though, and part of me is going, how do I use that in class? Oh, that was a great line, or that was a great, that showed, a good example of conflict, or there's a lot of irony right there. And so when I go into school and I'm talking about irony next year, I might be like, wasn't it ironic this thing about Scottie Pippen, or like when the Bulls lost to the Pistons that time, like, because that's going to create a connection point for students. What you're trying to do in education is bridge what they know to what they need to know. And so, and creating those building blocks. So I think I'm always doing that. And I'm always looking I don't necessarily look for lessons right away. I'm always looking for educators that I think are doing cool stuff. So if I find an educator, then I'll dive into whatever they're doing. So whether that's on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, like in the Facebook group or whatever, it's always looking for, something new to add to my repertoire, right? And so that's how I'm always thinking about that stuff. But like, as soon as school's done, there are definitely times when I take breaks. So like maybe a week or two right after school's done. So like next week and the following week, I might not want to touch anything education. But from then on, it's like no matter where we go, what we're doing, what we're watching, what I'm listening to, whatever podcast is on, I'm always trying to think about how I can implement this into what I'm doing. Chris Chong is asking, I have 2 more weeks left of school. Any advice for finishing strong? First of all, Chris, we will all be praying for you, really, because that is a lot longer than most of us have to do. Also, do you have any ideas for end of the year activities that work well for online schooling? So, Chris, I thought I would do something fun at the end of the year. I'm exhausted on a level this year that just don't think anyone is. So like we did a phone. So we've been doing phone calls, me and my friend Cho, or Zoom calls every Friday with all the seniors. And then the front end of that, it was a lot of seniors were showing up for it. And then I missed it the other night. I had a deadline on Friday night that I had to get to for a company that I'm working with. And I just couldn't do it. And I knew it was going to be the last one, but I forgot about it. I probably would have popped in, but like I just forgot about it because I was like focused in on what I was doing. So I text Cho after it and I'm like, no, dude, I forgot the last Zoom call. Like, who was on there? I want to make sure I reach out to them and tell them I care about them. And like, I didn't forget about them. And she goes, no, it's just me and one other kid. And we were talking about was like that these guys have to be so exhausted with Zoom calls, with trying to make things fun, with school in general, with sitting in the house, that I just wasn't sure what to do. I think if I was going to do something though, and I've considered it, but I don't think anyone's going to go back on their school email now since school's finished, is create a video for students and just say like, look, the school year ended in a way that wasn't optimal. It's not the way that I wanted to happen, but I want you to know that I'm thinking about you. I'm praying about you. I am wishing for you. And if there's ever anything I can do, please let me know. And then maybe talk about like some of the fun things that happened this year. Here's things that I'm so grateful for in the time that I did have with you this year. Remember when this happened? Remember when this kid did this thing, or when Mr. So-and-so came in dressed like a banana, or whatever the hell it was. You're reminding kids, and it's like a gratefulness practice out loud, telling what you're grateful for in the time that you did have. And so that's what I would do. And look, if it's not like, if there's not like music and fireworks and stuff like that, that's cool. I think authenticity wins the game every single time, more than like any kind of showmanship. What you got there, buddy?
Mm-hmm.
See, Tracy Pinter showed up for work. She was supposed to be working.
She got let out early.
For her third job.
Yes, here. Mm-hmm.
Our friend Tracy and Unicorns Rock, they come on here and they like make sure that, you know, the person that was trying to post nude pictures earlier gets kicked out, and all the other wild people.
I know there's one. I'm sorry. It's hard to scroll when there's so much.
I got it.
Conversation.
That's because everyone's, isn't that awesome though, too? Like, it's like everyone's talking, and it's like, you know, it's not that just the Reynolds show. They're coming on here to like see their friends and like meet up with. I like when people come on in the beginning and they're like,
we'll do the last one because it's literally the last.
Cool, last one. When people say things like, hey everyone, and they start saying hi to one another.
Yeah. Well,
it's just so exciting.
Chris just popped in.
Cheyenne is asking, who, Chris Carson?
Yeah. Chris
Carson is getting better. Good for you, man. When you have interns at the beginning of your year, how do you introduce them to both the students and the parents? So that's a great question. So as someone that has had a new co-teacher, I've had something like 7, maybe 8, probably 7 co-teachers in the last 3 years, something like that. That's a lot of co-teachers, man. That's like more than one a year. And so when somebody comes into class, what I do is, so last year I had Kayla, who's been in a couple of the videos, and Kayla came in, and I, first of all, I don't let them know that they're like any less than me, right? Like, you're not, like, we are a team now, right? Working together. And so even though I'm very clearly like sort of the lead teacher because she's jumping around different classes all day, when we are in here together, it's the same amount of respect, it's the same amount of authority, it's the same amount of know-how, it's the same amount of everything that we have together. The other thing is, in the beginning of the year, I do a slideshow about who I am and what our year is going to look like, and I make sure to implement them in that slideshow as well, so that it's like, I want this to look like we are, this is team activity here. And then I think then it's up to them to sort of like make it happen for themselves, right? Like, you can offer it up, but it's like, what are they going to do? So I think what I would do is work with interns about like, how are you going to meet, engage, and interact with folks? Like, how are you going to let kids know that you're someone they can come to for help, that you care, that you're here to do the work, that you're excited about whatever it is you're excited about? How are parents going to know that stuff? So sharing in those responsibilities and in those interactions. So like, Kayla will often eat lunch with me in my room with a whole bunch of students. She'll stand in the hallway at the end of the day and interact with students as they're leaving, following up with kids, asking how their day was, asking, you know, how's your family doing? I know your mom was sick. How's that going? All that stuff. She's with me in that. And I think that students gravitate towards what they're most familiar with. And so if they see you in the hallway all the time, if you're asking them questions all the time anyway, when something comes up, when they need help, when there's a problem at home, when there's a problem in the classroom, when there's a problem with another teacher, they're going to come to you. And I think that naturally builds that relationship. So, and whether you're calling home for an issue, like there's a discipline issue or a grade issue, or you're calling home to just say, hey man, your kid's been doing an awesome job and I'm really, really proud of them. You're doing that together. And so when I even speak to parents, I refer to it as our classroom. I don't say like, hey, today in my class, today in our classroom, this thing happened, because it's Kayla and I's classroom together, working together on stuff. And so I think that those are just like a few like little ways you start talking about like the we instead of the I, changes a lot of stuff. You good?
Well, there's only one more, so you might want to ask.
Oh, sure.
Jessica's.
Jessica Small is asking, what are resources for teaching third graders about race? Hold on, just jumped. About race, I am from generational poverty, and I feel like most of what's available is speaking to middle class privileged white people, and that's not us. So Jessica, so first of all, if anyone has an answer, just throw that in there. I don't teach third grade, but I have younger kids. And this has been really like, so this is I could be wrong. I'm going to share this anyway. My kids have always grown up in a house where we have had a very, very diverse group of friends, right? So like friends from all over the world, friends that do not look like one another, friends that are different ages. Like some of my best friends are like in their mid-20s. And men, women, older folks, like it's a pretty diverse group. That coupled with where I've always taught, and my children are always a part of my classroom, especially now, not so much that Brody's getting older now, but like they used to come to school all the time and just kick it with my students. That, I think, created a world for my own children where they didn't notice or pick up on the fact that all these things were different, or people are coming from different socioeconomic backgrounds or different races, religions and stuff, because it was so much just a part of their life. That being said, my son's at school the other 2 years ago, something like that, and a kid says something about being racist, like called somebody out on something and said, that's racist. And Brody comes home and he goes, what's racist? And I was like, man, like there's part of you that is like, and look, this is part of privilege. It's like you have to let your kids in on the fact that like the world's not what they think it is when they're little, right? When they're really little. So it was trying to have that conversation with my son, which is difficult, right? And just because it was difficult for him to process and break that down. But it was like, look, well, this is what racism is. And he goes, and so he like was like, oh yeah, we talk about like Martin Luther King Jr. in school. I'm like, yeah, you do, but like you talk about certain aspects, but
nice
not
version.
Yeah, it's not all of it. I found that the way, so that happened. Right after that, the show Raising Dion comes on and on Netflix. Do you remember this night?
Mm-hmm.
This was like a moment in the show Raising Dion, which is a story about a little kid. He's a black kid. His dad is killed when he's younger. He's living with his mom. He goes to this school that's predominantly white, and the assistant principal, they don't make a huge deal out of it, but there's a moment in the school where like there was a white kid and a black kid, something happened. The principal blames the black kid, and it was clearly a racist move, right? But my son goes, wait, pause this. So this is us watching TV all the time. We pause things so much, it takes 7 years to get through anything. Pause it. Why did he just blame Dion? He didn't even do anything wrong. Why did he blame him? I go, well, bro, that's racism. Wait, it was just because he was black? Like, that's why he blamed him? Yeah, bro, that's what that is. And so what it was with this moment was that I felt like it was such a special like bridge for our children was they saw it in action. They saw it play out on something that they were already locked in on with a character that they already liked, and it was like, I remember like Marley started sobbing this is gonna make me emotional. Marley started sobbing on the couch because of how unfair that was. But it was like pulling back the curtain and letting our kids see the world for what it is. And then since that moment has built into any number of other conversations where like Brody was riding with me to school one day and he goes, Dad, why are so many houses near your school beaten up? And like, they just kind of look like no one takes care of them. And so talking about things like gentrification, talking about things like where people live and renting and like all the things that come up in that systematic oppression. It's like if you sit your kids down and you go, listen, let's talk about systemic racism in the United States. It's like it's a lecture. But what we found was that connecting it to something that our kids already saw and saying, Are you paying close enough attention though? Because if you are, you see the problems within, culture already. So if I was teaching third graders, it would be like just shining a light on it. It is like taking a look at things a little bit closer to see what's actually there. And I think that's how I would do it. That's how I teach everything. Like whether it's like gender equity, equality, freedom, racism, like any number of things that come up in my class, it's like you have to make it personal and then teach through a lens that kids already are interested in, right? So that
I also said Apron Educator and Read Like a Rock Star, possibly on TPT.
Yep.
I don't know what they have, but that's their...
Call Me Shivy's a good one. I think Dustin Ecker's excellent with that. He's on Instagram also.
She's not on Instagram.
Oh,
so that's why I pointed her to TPT. Their resources are probably on TPT, but if you're on Instagram, there are a ton of people to follow that are elementary.
But those two educators, real quick, in Read Like a Rock Star and Apron Educator, are Black female educators that create resources for folks to use in bridging those conversations. So sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
Cool. All right, gang. That's all we're doing for the week. Look.
Holy smokes, that was 2 hours.
It was. If you're out there in the streets, if you're getting, if you're doing, whether you're out in the streets, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're, supporting folks in some other way, please be safe. We're really thinking about you, and like I just want people to be safe. If there's ever anything I can do, please reach out. Thanks for all the support on the video the other day in which we were talking about race. It was really well received, and I'm really just honored that those folks would come on and like be vulnerable and honest with the group of us that were on there. It was really something to just even be a part of. And look, all that I'm doing is for educators, trying to help and empower educators. So whether it's like you grab the book or you become part of the Facebook group or you sign up for mentoring, like all those things exist to help folks to go deeper and to be the best educators that they can be for their students, because education is only ever about the kids. So that's it, everyone. Have a great night. Peace. Hitting all the buttons, Jake, so I can sign off, because it takes forever for all of this thing to do it.